So you want to be a witch, or you're at least curious about witchcraft and curious about people who do identify as witches. So witchcraft is something that really slides in and out of popularity. If you've got lots of activism going on, sometimes witchcraft has a bit of a boom. It can also have a boom in terms of what films and TV programs are coming out. So Hello the Craft and Hello the Craft Revisited. But for some of us, being a witch really isn't dependent on whether or not it's fashionable. It does mean that we can find more books if more publishers are happy to publish more books. And it does mean we get loads of cool stuff in the shops at some points, and then they go again. But being a witch is more than just a trend. It's inherent within me. It's something I've identified as since my teenage years, and I'm not about to stop now. So what makes you a witch? How can you decide that you want to be a witch? And then how do you make that step to being one? Well, whether or not you can be a witch isn't something that I or anybody else gets to decide. Witch isn't a protected term, although sometimes you may hear people talking about it as though it is. There are many, many different ways to be a witch. There are many ways to bring that into your life. And there certainly is not just one way or one definition. In fact, if you look through or if you Google what is a witch, you'll find so many different definitions depending on who it is you're asking. So if you want to study witchcraft, then there are so many ways for you to do this, but you don't need to do any study at all either. So when you look at these definitions, you may see the words nature-based religion or nature worshipping involved in the definitions. And you may also see that witchcraft is associated with being of a pagan religion or being a Wiccan or being part of a Wiccan religion. And although many witches are nature worshipping, they are pagan, they are Wiccan, you don't have to be. And there are many, many witches who identify as none of these things. You don't have to be any religion, or you can be any religion to identify as a witch. You also don't have to love and worship nature. So if anyone can call themselves a witch and there doesn't have to be any description of what that means, how can we define it? How can you decide, I want to be a witch, and know what you need to do in order to do so? Well, we've already said you can call yourself it and it's in the heart. But let's look at how we can define witchcraft. So for many people, witchcraft is defined as being something supernatural. So it's something that's very much not of this world, something that can't be explained with science. But a lot of witchcraft and a lot of the things we do as witches maybe can be described, can be defined with science. Maybe when we're looking at things like affirmations or we're looking at certain types of spellcraft, we may be able to find reasons why they're happening. So does that then make it supernatural? Does that take away that supernatural element? Witchcraft is often described as being something that seems a bit scary or seems a bit otherworldly. And that, I think, is more sort of where we want to go with that otherworldly. If anyone can be a witch, then does that limit the fact that what we do is special, what we do is different? So by then identifying witchcraft as being otherworldly, as being specific sets of skills and abilities that other people don't have, that keeps the power in the word. So I'm going to offer my own slightly wordy definition here. And I'm going to say a witch is somebody who uses otherworldly skills and abilities to intuit what's happening, to understand things that are hidden, and to manifest change. And you may note that through all of this, I've not said anything about white witches or black witches. There really is no such thing as a good witch or a bad witch, in the same way as there's no good person or no bad person. We can't assign morality to people. Sometimes we do good things, sometimes we do bad. Most of the time, we believe that our actions are correct, whatever they may be. And I also really don't like the idea of using white and black as representing good and bad, because that's not how anything works. And I don't think colours are a useful way of describing morality either. And you may also know that when I was describing what witches are and using this definition, I didn't say anything about working with deities. And what I mean by deities are non-Christian gods. So things like, for example, the Greek gods and goddesses, the Egyptian gods and goddesses, the Norse gods and goddesses. And lots of witches do work with deities. Similarly, though, lots of witches work with saints, or they'll work with Loa, or witches will work with a god, and they will work with the Christian version of God. So just because you're a witch doesn't mean you need to believe in multiple deities, and it definitely doesn't mean that you need to work with any deities at all. So those witches who don't work with deities may choose to work with other entities instead. And this can be lots of different types of entity, but again, it doesn't have to be. To be a witch, you don't have to use or work with anything other than your own self. But some witches will work with spirit or with spirits. Some will work with ancestors. Some may work with plants, and some may see those plants as being plant spirits, or they may work with animal spirits or animal essences. They may work with crystals, or they may work with the tides of the moon. So being a witch doesn't necessarily mean you have to work with spirits or with elements or with anything. Whatever works for you works for you. So what do witches do? What are these otherworldly skills and abilities? Well, the one that most people will think about is casting spells or spellcraft, using spells in order to create change. A version of this can be healing, or it can be cursing, or it can even be removing curses or helping somebody to remove the limitations they've put on themselves. Another thing witches are well known for is divination. So with divination, you're looking at what the future holds, either for yourself or for somebody else. So you can do this with pendulum, you can do this with tarot cards, or any other way that you would do a psychic reading for somebody. So including things like runes, for example. And finally, you can also use witchcraft for activism. There is a real kind of drive towards political witchcraft, towards making the changes and the manifestations have political and activist intent. And this does also include the concept of green witchery, which can also be about climate change. But not all green witches and plant-based, earth-based witches are activists or climate activists. So they can be together, or they can be two different things. So how do you become a witch? Well, it comes from in here, but it also comes from really claiming that title. It comes from standing up, using the term, and in order to feel confident to do so, you may want to do some kind of rite or something that creates that feeling in yourself that you are able to use that title. So for some people that could be a dedication, for some it could be an initiation. But you can find that just making that decision and taking that time to say, yes, I am wanting to use this title now, can be enough. So just calling yourself a witch is enough. But then you need to think about what the work is. And that, again, is different for every person. What's your work? What do you do? What do you need in order to be a witch? What's your own personal practice? And this is where, again, it has to come from you, but it can't all come from you. And that's entirely fine. So read, listen to podcasts, watch TikTok videos, find all the things that you need to do to listen and learn from other people. But don't take those people as gospel. So learn and learn and learn, but decide for yourself how what they're telling you feels. So with all witchcraft, even if we look at grimoires from the past, even if we look at things that have been written down in books of shadows and all kinds of things, it's come from people. It may have been channeled through deity or whatever, but it's come from people. So those people are not more knowledgeable than you. They've certainly probably done a lot of studying, and that's great. But the more study you do, the more knowledgeable you will become. And of course, you know more about what you need. So everything that you listen to, pick up the bits that you like and throw away the bits that you don't like. So keep what works for you. Don't keep what doesn't work for you. There's no absolute right way. So, how do you make sure that you're not making mistakes? Well, we just can't in any areas of our lives. Myself, I've made lots of mistakes in witchcraft, and lots of witches will tell you the same. We've done things and thought, oh my goodness, I really should never have done that. We've got some tall tales to tell you. We've got some stories, some of which are hilarious, some of which might be a little bit scary. But we learn by making these mistakes, and we learn by talking to each other about the mistakes that we made. So the biggest thing that I can tell you is try and listen to your instincts when it comes to safety. So there will be a really good way of protecting your space and yourself when you work. So for some people, that may be the rule of three, by sort of saying what I put out, I get back, and thinking of it that way. For some, it may be thinking harm none. For others, it might be creating a circle. For others, it may be saying, and it, and it's my will if it's the will of the universe, or and it harm none, this is what it will be. Or you may do things and say, this can't come back on me, this is protected. So whatever way you choose to protect yourself, make sure that you put that in place and keep that in place. So that can be anything that you want to do. When you're starting, I think a good way of doing it is basically saying, I want to protect myself, or I want to do as little harm as possible. So being able to say, if this isn't right, or if this isn't right now, then nothing's going to happen. So putting in almost that kind of layer of protection. So do think about that. Lots of witches, however, don't work with protection and do perfectly well. They're still running around surviving, and the rule of ninefold or whatever it is hasn't come back to bite them. So there are lots of witches who do perfectly well without protection. But while you're starting, put something in place just to kind of have that sort of safety net. But also really, really use your instinct. So whatever you're doing, just take a moment, think, does this feel right? Does it feel okay? Do I feel very calm about what I'm doing? Do I feel this is the right decision? And if it doesn't feel right, stop, adapt, try something else. And learning to listen to your intuition, learning to listen to that little voice inside is perhaps the best witch skill that you can learn, and that first one to really start honing. So fly, my pretties. Go, listen, learn, practice, make your mistakes, listen to your instincts, and claim that title of witch for yourself if it feels right for you.